Alright, hello again, this is Jeff Scott, and I'm talking HTML5 and CSS3 courtesy of Murox HTML5 and CSS3 3rd edition. We've been going through now, we're about halfway through section 3 of the book. So I'm going to right now go into chapter 16. And chapter 16 is how to use the Jquery UI or user interface and Jquery plugins to enhance your web pages. Alright, now I do want to mention, because I showed you this at the end of the last lecture, that if you go out to jqueryui.com, you'll find over here, and it's set into different sections. There's an interactions, a widgets, and I showed you an example of the accordion. Alright, there's effects, and a couple utilities that you can put in there. Again, this is all open source code that you can use. I would recommend that rather than just grabbing the code like I did, you actually sit and read and try it and see exactly what's happening in here. Alright, it's one thing to sit there and copy code, it's another thing to have an understanding. So if I want to come in here and let's say, oh, I don't know, I want a slider. Right, I can just go in and click view source here and I can copy all of that code, and that's fine and dandy. There's not much in there. But I can also come up here and I can see what's happening, and I can try to think of the context in which I might want to use something like that. So kind of keep that in mind, if you would, as we get started here. So what we're looking to do, given an HTML document, use the Jquery user interface or UI to enhance the page to include things like accordions, tabs, buttons, and dialogues. Given an HTML document, enhance the page by using Jquery plugins such as Lightbox, BX Slider, or Cycle 2. Use the internet to find additional plugins for Jquery that you can use in functions. Some of these plugins will be free, others will be at a nominal cost. And you can also, if you look out there, you can find people who are willing to build you plugins, which won't be so cheap. In general terms, describe the Jquery UI and the 4 features it provides. Explain why you might want to build a custom Jquery UI download. Describe the 3 files that Jquery UI requires. In general terms, describe how you use Jquery UI for functions like accordions, tabs, buttons, and dialogues. In general terms, explain what a plugin is. In general terms, describe the process of finding and using a plugin. In general terms, describe how to use Jquery plugins for features like lightboxes, carousels, and slideshows. And notice many of them, 4, 5, 6, and 7 here, and 1 here, etc. So many of them are prefaced with in general terms. Alright, the way that you do this, the way you use this, the way you incorporate this kind of things into a database, exactly how the role you give the Jquery UI and Jquery plugins is of course going to be dependent upon what you're trying to do, your expertise or lack thereof, what the user might want. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going out and finding a plugin and putting it into a website as opposed to writing it yourself. In fact, sorry, gotta pause for a second. Alright, so I apologize for that. But what I was getting to was, if I come out here and I go in, not even worrying about the Jquery UI right now, but I type in free Jquery plugins as an example. Well, I get over 1 million hits. Alright, notice there's jQueryScript.net. 5,400 plus free Jquery plugins with examples and tutorials. Well, that to me looks like a really nice place to start. When I'm building a website, there's going to be enough work to do anyway, to figure out colors, to figure out text, to figure out fonts, to figure out every little detail, to figure out how that website is going to look on different platforms, how it's going to look in different browsers, etc. So if I decide I'm going to use I don't know, a carousel, I could write the JavaScript to do it myself, but why should I when someone else already has? Now, when I say this, I'm talking about a professional going out there doing this. If you're given an assignment and you're told to go and write something, no, that doesn't mean that I'm advocating you go out to the net and find it. Not at all. But what I'm saying is that people who do this for a living are oftentimes going to be using plugins and the like for the work that they do. That's all that I mean. All right. So the 4 types of features provided by the jQuery UI. You already saw those: widgets, themes, interactions, and effects. The primary folders and files in a full jQuery UI download. So you can download that. You can download all of that stuff. All right? So notice, index.html, there's a jQuery UI CSS file, a jQuery UI minimized CSS file, a jQuery UI JavaScript file, and a jQuery UI minimized JavaScript file. And I've never even tried to do this, but I see no reason why we couldn't come out here and go to jquery.com, period, all right, and download it. All right, do we want to custom download? No, let's just do the quick. We'll do the stable one. All right, so I'll do that. Now I'm downloading it. It's going right here. I'll do a show in folder and Control X because I want to remove it. And I'm just going to literally, I've got a folder here that's called Chapter16. I'm going to put it in there. All right, there was the accordion stuff. So I'm going to create a new folder here that I'm going to call jQuery UI. All right, so there it is. And now I'm going to paste in, this is that zip file, so I'm just going to go and extract it right here. Didn't take very long. So there it is. Now if I go out here and I go to the index.html, well, what do I have? There's my accordion. There's my autocomplete. Okay, so I've got all of the examples, or most of them at least, that are in here, or a bunch of them that are in here. Okay. Otherwise, what I have done in the past, and I've got to find this file and see if I can put it out there, is I went and copied in the source code for all 29 of the different, jQuery UI widgets. Okay. All right. How to build a custom jQuery UI library and download its files. From the home page, click the download link. Select or deselect the interactions, widgets, etc. So they're talking about custom. So in other words, when I went in here, you just saw this. I clicked that. If I click custom download, then I can choose what I want. The version, the different components I want. All right, so I can select anything or deselect anything that I want here. And that's what the author's talking about in this section. It's right here. All right, how you include those downloaded files in your application? Well, of course, you're going to need the jQuery, and again, the recommendation is to use the minified CSS and the minified JavaScript file. Make sure that if you use the jQuery UI, you put it after the regular jQuery file, not before it, because it's going to overwrite some of the stuff that was in jQuery. So here's an example of the accordion. You saw it already. As it says in the left sidebar, you can click on a widget's name to display its documentation. In the right sidebar, click on an example name. You can see a working example. I just showed you both of those. All right. The way that you oftentimes do this, it's selector.method. So we called the selector. We We call that div. If you remember, we gave it an ID of accordion. So we said #accordion dot accordion, because that's the name of the method. All right. Again, there's the example. You can put anything you want in here. Quite often, for an accordion, what you use for an accordion is you use it for a frequently asked questions page. So you're able to have a bunch of questions on there, and each one of them is in their own tab, and when you click on the tab, that becomes the active tab. When you do work with this, and it didn't show it in the example, but there are different attributes you can set. The event that triggers it, the height, whether or not it's collapsible, etc. Here's the tabs example. And again, I'm not going to be going through all these. I just really don't see the need to do this. But what this does, I've clicked on the tab that says book description. You can see there's 2 paragraphs. If I clicked on about the author, there'd probably be 2 different paragraphs, and who this book is for, 2 different paragraphs. So quite often on a web page, I mean, think about it. What's the most valuable real estate on a web page? And the answer is the screen, you know, what's on your page. So you're able to use the same area to hold 3 different things. And the user then, the person who's looking at the site, it'll be their responsibility to click the correct tab to get what they want to look at. This is how it's set up. And where it says the content, again, that's where you'd put in whatever content you wanted. But notice how simple. You don't have to call this tabs, but why not? You don't have to call the other one accordion, but why not? Calling it what it is. So this says find an ID, name tabs, and run the tabs on it. Well, that's everything that's inside of here. All right. Here's a button widget. As it says, it activates a dialog. So when you click on this button right here, it opens up the information that's here that talks, maybe has a description about this book, and it's got an X there. So when you click the X, it closes it. All right. Now here they called it book. They could have called it button. Wouldn't have hurt. All right. And they're saying when you click on the book, run that function. Also notice here it says modal true. When something is modal like this, all right, this is modal. So what they're saying is until you click that X, you're basically going to be kind of in purgatory right here. When something is modal. So for instance, if I do a Control P right now, not from here, I have to stop this. Come on. So if I do a Control P, all right, it brings up, literally that's modal. I can't go on until I do something with this. All right, you see modal all over the place in here. All right, if I do a file, yeah, it's going to give me all that stuff. I don't want to do that. How about a save as? All right, and if I browse, this is a modal box right now. I can't click outside of it and do other stuff. It's going to beep or whatever until I answer this, until I either save or until I click cancel. All right, and that's what they're talking about in here. Again, there's the code. A Google search for a jQuery plugin. I already showed you that. If you know the name of the plugin, of course, it's going to be much easier. But me just putting in free jQuery plugins came up with 1,070,000 hits, and the first one that was there had 5,400 free plugins. But if I know I want to use something like this, a rotator type of thing, then I could type in jQuery plugin rotator. If I wanted a free one, of course, I'd probably preface that with free. Here are some major websites that you can go to find jQuery plugins. Notice the first one, that's the plugin repository. I believe that most everything on this page, I could be wrong, but I believe most everything on this page, on this slide right here, these 5 websites, the stuff in here should be free. All right. So to go back to the book, again, Jquery UI is a free open source JavaScript library that extends the Jquery library by providing higher level features. A Jquery UI download consists of a zip file that contains the CSS files, images, Jquery UI files, and an HTML document that can be used to demonstrate. The only folders and files that you have to include typically are the images folder and the min versions or compressed versions of the CSS file and the jQuery file. The external folder in the download includes the jQuery library file. So if you wondered what that was. The download also includes full and compressed versions of structure and theme CSS files. When you build a download for a web page, you can keep the file size smaller by just selecting the widgets, doing the customization that I'd shown you. To use a Jquery Ui widget, you code the HTML in Jquery for the widget. In the Jquery, you code the selector and the method to be used in the options. For a Jquery widget that requires images, Jquery Ui expects the CSS file and the images folder to be at the same level. For the accordion, in the Jquery, the accordion method is used to implement the accordion widget for the div element that represents the accordion. By default, a panel is open when the header is clicked. One panel always has to be open, and all the panels open to the same size. You can change that with some of the options for the accordion method. The basic formatting for the accordion is done by the CSS file for the Jquery Ui, but you can use your style sheet to format the contents within the panels any way you'd prefer. For the tabs widget, again, the HTML should consist of a div element that contains an unordered list that represents the tabs. The heading for each tab should be an anchor element within an li element. In Jquery, the tabs method is used to implement the tabs widget. By default, the tab is switched to when the header is clicked. And again, the basic formatting is done by the CSS for the Jquery Ui, but you can use your own CSS. The button that we just looked at can be any kind of button type: button, submit, reset, radio, or checkbox. If you want to prevent a dialog widget from appearing when the page loads, you can set its property to none. Again, in the Jquery, you use the button method to activate the button widget. Jquery provides many options for dialog widgets. Modal was an example that we just saw. By default, a dialog box is resizable and draggable, but you can change that by setting those particular things to false if you want to do that. And Jquery plugins are JavaScript apps that extend the functionality of Jquery. They use the core Jquery library. Some of them we just looked at. Others, as you saw, you can find by searching the internet. Plugins are available for literally dozens, if not hundreds, of different things. I do want to mention one more thing. So there's another popular plugins for displaying images. It may be mentioned in here, so I may be being a little bit premature right here, but I do want to mention a site that's out there that, just in case it's not mentioned, because otherwise I'll forget to do so. And that is, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in Jquery Validator. Alright, and it comes out to https://jqueryvalidation.org. And there is a 13-minute long video that you can watch here on the plugin, and there are examples that you can download, etc. on here. But this is another free plugin that you can use, and you can set up and do a lot of very, very customizable work when validating HTML forms. Okay. All right. Let's finish up this chapter. So here's some popular plugins. The Lightbox, typically you get a set of like thumbnail images, and if you click on any of them, it gets bigger. You can peruse your way through. Fancybox and Thickbox are somewhat similar, same with Shadowbox. There's all sorts of built-in plugins for slideshows, carousels, photo galleries, etc. The general steps for using a plugin are shown on the screen here and on page 547 in the book. And so the author says, study the documentation. You really should do that first. All right. If the plugin files are available via CDN, you can use that. Otherwise, you download the files. In the head element of the HTML page, code the link to the CSS files. Also code the script elements for the JavaScript files. Again, this must be after the jQuery link. If the download for a plugin includes an images folder, make sure the folder has the right structure relationship with both the CSS and JavaScript in the plugin. Code the HTML and CSS for the page that's appropriate for the plugin, and if necessary, write additional jQuery code to use methods and options of the plugin. So you want to make sure you include a script element for jQuery and make sure that that script element appears, your plugin thing appears after it. Not doing so is a common error. Some plugins won't work with the latest version of jQuery, so check the documentation if you have any issues getting it to work. Some plugins can be accessed via a CDN, but most are downloaded and stored on the server. Here is an example of one of those. The chapter ends starting on page 548, so the last 2, 4, 6 pages of the chapter talks about how to use 3 of the most popular jQuery plugins. The first one is the Lightbox plugin. All right. So this picture is shown on 549 in your book, and the author mentions that the Lightbox plugin can be used to display larger versions of thumbnail images. It starts when the user clicks one of the thumbnail images. When the user clicks on a thumbnail image within a set of thumbnail images, the rest of the page is darkened and a larger version of the image is displayed. The Lightbox download includes a CSS file, a plugin file, and an image folder that contains an image for loading and images for the close, next, and previous icons. The HTML for the Lightbox consists of the image elements within A tags. The data Lightbox attributes of the A tag elements activate the Lightbox, and the data title elements can be used to provide captions. So you can set up yourself a nice little Lightbox. And what do I mean by that? Let's take a look and let's see if the author provided something like that in the Chapter 16 material. All right, I don't know if I copied everything over or not. It looks like I did not. So let's go back to our I don't want to be in Chapter 16, so slideshow downloads, Chapter 15, Jquery UI. I don't want any of those, I guess. Going to here, stretch this out, try to. Come on. All right, find my P drive, CIS, you know the drill, or you're starting to learn it by now. 152, 157, full 2016, source code, book apps, Chapter 16, it says there is none. Okay. So is that empty? Yes, it is. So let's do this. jQuery Lightbox example. All right, so it looks like there's one here. Okay, so here's a 4-image set. See what happens? The background darkens. There's usually forward and backward buttons, so I can peruse my way through here also. All right. Now, I always recommend that if you're going to do this, that you make your slides the same size. All right, either by picking things that are the same size or by using some kind of an image program to make them the same size. Okay? You don't have to, but again, I think it works better when you do. So there's the other example. It's right there. I don't see the thing to allow me to go to another page. Right, but those are light boxes. The slider plugin used for a carousel. Well, I may or may not have shown you this before, but I'm going to show you a very simple type of carousel example, and I'm going to, because it's one that is used with something that's called Bootstrap, which is another thing that you can do. So I'm going to come over to here and just show you this example. I may have shown you this already anyway. But this is a slideshow right here. All right, I'm going to just leave it there. I'm not touching anything. And it appears as though it's been turned off. I can literally start it so every 5 seconds or so it changes, but I can change to the next slide by clicking here. I can go to the previous slide by clicking here. I can also go to the next slide by clicking the button down here and the next one and back, etc. So I can do all that too, just so you're aware of that. So that's basically, that's what a slideshow is going to end up looking like. All right? I just wanted to introduce you to some of this stuff so you see it in action, so to speak. Not, again, not much code. You have to bring in what you want, the CSS file, and again, the actual slider underneath your call to the jQuery, and you'll have to add some HTML and some jQuery because it has to know the CSS or the HTML you're adding is basically going to be the pictures of your images, and the jQuery you're adding is going to be, well, which of the options, if any, do you want to set? Alright, there's also this cycle 2 thing here, so let's just whip through this. I told you about the Lightbox stuff already. The BX Slider plugin makes it easy to develop a carousel. The HTML is an unordered list with one list item for each slide. The BX Slider website provides excellent examples and option summaries, so I probably should have gone out there to show you an example. Probably, I don't know if it's under bxslider.com or not, but we can check. And it is. Alright, so there's examples out here on how to use this. Alright. If the slide images contain title attributes, the captions options will make them captions. And the download consists again of a JavaScript file, a CSS file, and an image folder. Alright. Finally, again, with a cycle 2 is another way that you can create slide shows. As we finish up the chapter here, it treats the children of a div element as the slides. These children are usually image elements, but can be div elements that contain text and images. The best way to include the plugin is to use the GitHub CDN for it. The Cycle 2 website provides excellent demos and summaries that show you this. So again, let's go out to it and see if it is cycle2.com. So we just looked at bxslider.com. This would be cycle2.com. Nope, it says that that's available. So let's see. Cycle 2 jQuery plugin, and it's under jQuerymalsup.com, cycle 2. Alright, if you want to take a look for that. Again, demos, they run you through everything that you have to do. Alright. That pretty much is it. I guess if I had kept going, I would have found these URLs. And that stuff at the end of the chapter that utilizes it. Okay? And that's it. So, we've completed the chapter, so you should be able to use some, most, all of the popular jQuery UI widgets and know where to go to look for some popular jQuery plugins. Alright? In the next chapter, we'll finish up the jQuery section by talking about how to use jQuery mobile to build mobile websites. And I'll be back with that after I have lunch.